Ready. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's live broadcast, Patient Number 1, Pioneering Immunotherapy and Finding the Best Right Treatment for Stage 4 Melanoma, presented by TJ Sharpe. We are excited to bring you this educational web seminar presented by LabRoots and sponsored by Roche Diagnostics. As a global leader in healthcare, Roche Diagnostics offers a broad portfolio of tools that help healthcare providers in the early detection, prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of diseases. In molecular diagnostics, Roche Diagnostics is driven by a vision of working with laboratories like yours to improve the medical value you offer in microbiology, infectious diseases, oncology, and genomics. The company continues to meet unmet needs through its investment in research innovation and scientific excellence, with the goal of supporting your important role in improving patients' lives. To learn more about Roche Diagnostics, please visit usdiagnostics.roche.com. I am Judy O'Rourke of LabRoots, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone this event is interactive. We encourage you to participate by submitting as many questions as you want at any time you want during the presentation. Just click on the green Q&A button located in the lower left of the presentation window and type your question into the box that appears on the screen. We'll try to get to as many as we can, and we'll follow up if we don't have time today. Also, please notice that you will be viewing the presentation in the slide window. To enlarge the window, just click on the screen icon located on the lower right. And finally, if you have trouble seeing or hearing the presentation, please click on the support button at the top right of the presentation window, or use the Q&A button to let us know that you're having a problem. Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce TJ Sharpe. TJ is sharing his fight against stage 4 melanoma in his weekly Patient Number 1 blog on www.philly.com/patient1. A South Jersey native and Bishop Eustace and Carnegie Mellon University graduate, he currently lives in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, with his wife Jennifer and children Josie and Tommy. He was patient number 1 in a clinical trial at Moffitt Cancer Center in Tampa as the first person worldwide to use this sequence of treatments to fight melanoma, and is currently in a second clinical trial at Holy Cross Hospital in Fort Lauderdale, receiving Merck's anti-PD-1 drug, pembrolizumab. Please join me in welcoming TJ. I will now turn the presentation over to him.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. As Judy mentioned, my name is TJ Sharpe. We are presenting the keynote today, Pioneering Immunotherapy and Finding the Best Right Treatment. Unlike many of the presentations that LabRoots has done the last day and a half, this one is being done by a patient actively getting an immunotherapy. In just a few minutes, we are going to hook up myself to my 43rd dose of Keytruda, also known as pembrolizumab, and get a dose of my clinical trial. So my information is right there. I do, as Judy mentioned, write a blog about my experiences on Patient Number 1 on Philly.com. I want to thank first LabRoots for hosting this, Roche Diagnostics for sponsoring, and Holy Cross for administrating the drug today and the 42 previous doses, and the team here. Excuse us. This was going to be a live broadcast of the actual infusion, but unfortunately we ran into some technical issues, and we're only going to have PowerPoint slides going forward, but hopefully it'll give you an idea of what we're going to do. We'll start with the introduction and tell more about what we're going to do. The infusion will be here momentarily. Although you cannot see it, we will be hooking me up in a few minutes to an IV and getting ourselves infused with 30 minutes of Merck's pembrolizumab. After that, we're going to play a quick video called The Promise of Immunotherapy. Speaking of pembrolizumab, it's featured on there, as are we here at Holy Cross, and I am as a patient. It'll give you a little more detail, certainly much more than I could explain, about how current immunotherapy therapies work. And from there, we'll go on to a little bit of the backstory of what I've gone through and why we've titled it Pioneering Immunotherapy and Finding the Best right treatment. You'll see the quote, "I'd be surprised if he is here in 2 years." And I'll tell you the story in a few minutes. We'll do something called Finding Your Research Ninja. And finding the best right treatment is a team effort. Someone told me once that cancer doesn't affect a person, it affects a family. And we have a cute little slide about that that describes exactly or in detail what we've been able to do kind of as a team to overcome a stage 4 melanoma diagnosis, and how that would be applicable for other patients to hear and understand when they're beginning their journey through a melanoma or a different cancer diagnosis. We'll then talk about what life is like with immunotherapy. There's a quote from one of the doctors here that said, "You're using your immune system to fight cancer." So we'll discuss some of the things that we've done and changed in our lives that allow us to get the most out of this drug, and certainly enhance my chances of a durable long-term response. And then we'll have a Q&A at the end, as Judy mentioned. So the presentation should last somewhere between 30 and 40 minutes, and we'll have plenty of time for questions afterwards. It depends on how long this infusion goes. We'll start right now with a quick background. Again, my name is TJ Sharpe, and when I was 25, I was diagnosed with a stage 1B melanoma. Being 25 years old, I thought this wasn't a big deal. We got it surgically removed, and the doctor told me to stay out of the sun. There's a 50% chance that you get melanoma again in your lifetime. So it was hats, long sleeves, sunscreen, and a move from New Jersey to Florida that tried to keep me out of the sun as best as possible. Fast forward 12 years later, we had just had our second child, my son Tommy, and I went into the hospital with what I thought was a spiking fever. The doctor that admitted me looked at my x-rays of the chest, understood my history of melanoma, and said, with your history of cancer, we think you have a recurrence of your melanoma. And I told him, I go, we're here for the spiking fever, not for the melanoma. Unfortunately, the doctor was right, and that kicked off a 3-year and counting odyssey that saw us go through 2 clinical trials, 4 immunotherapies, and 6 different surgeries, beginning with one, that hospital stay, to remove a 9-centimeter tumor. One of the things that we have focused on is getting better and not just prolonging time I'm here. So we're very happy to report quickly that currently I'm considered stable disease with 2 spots remaining on CT scans. PET scans have shown to be very clear with no detectable cancer in there. So while I can't get the coveted no evidence of disease status, we certainly believe as a team, and I believe as a patient that we are going to win this one, and it's just a matter of time before those spots either disappear or turn out to be scar tissue or something besides cancer cells. The tumor burden is less than 15% of what it was before, and we're hoping that is really non-cancerous spots on there. I've also been fortunate enough to share my journey with the world, it seems, but at least with a small amount of readership in the Philadelphia area, and whoever has been able to pick it up, with a blog post that started just as a way of letting family and friends know how I was doing, and it's turned into something that has enabled me to interact with caregivers, patients, doctors, advocacy groups, and really understand that what is going on in the cancer research world that's being pioneered by some of the treatments I have is pretty remarkable. And it's a very small silver lining that I've been able to somewhat influence or somewhat help others who are starting their journey after mine, and have been able to read and see that this isn't the death sentence it was just a few short years ago. So At this point, we're going to start the infusion. We're actually wheeling the medicine down now, so we won't have it for a few minutes, and luckily we're not broadcasting that video right now. So what we're going to do is there is a video called The Promise of Immunotherapy done by the Melanoma Research Alliance. Judy, if you'll be so kind as to start this. For those of you viewing at home, it will open in a different window, so when it closes up, just come on back and we'll resume the presentation. That's muted, so we have a minute or so we can actually call. Calling now. It's got to go onto their. It's got to go through their system to broadcast out.
We had it. I could hear her. They could hear us.
Okay, thank you everybody for coming back. I hope you enjoyed that video and the description of the history of immunotherapy and where its poised to go in the near future in the research world. We'll give you a little bit more about details about my story. There's a picture of me and my family. You can see the little guy is only 4 weeks old at this time. This is right before my first surgery in August of 2012. Like I said earlier, I went in for a spiking fever, and I emerged 16 days later, -1 9-centimeter tumor, and with other tumors found in both lungs, my liver, and my spleen. We met with the oncologist after the surgery, and he was a nice guy and a general oncologist, and certainly was not a melanoma specialist, and he looked at the tumor genome sequencing and handed us a sheet and said, well, this is your tumor, and here's your genetics. You should probably have dacarbazine, which is a standard chemotherapy for melanoma. Good luck. And my wife, who was sitting right next to us, said, okay, well, what are we talking here, Doc? What's the real prognosis? And he kind of offhandedly, very casually said, well, I'd be surprised if he's here in 2 years. And as I handed the tissues over to Jen, I started making a list of things I was going to do, and be here in 2 years was at the very top of that list. So one of the things that we decided that day was that we're not going to just settle for what was the standard of care, or it was just the suggestion we made. So, you know, we got 4 opinions before we finally found a clinical trial that we felt suited us best. And during that sort of interview process, if you will, one of the oncologists told us that there's treatments that would give us many months. You know, and I kind of stopped him and said, that's nice, and that's not for me. You know, I have a family to take care of, a family that needed me here. Many months wasn't going to be an option. You know, prolonging life for a little bit wasn't what we were looking for. So we went in search of more personalized medicine, and we found immunotherapies just as they began to take off in the melanoma world, with melanoma really being at the forefront of these therapies. We also knew that for a best chance at a durable long-term response, we were looking for the cutting edge of medicine, and luckily it found it in a TIL trial, in a clinical trial, and specifically a TIL trial. So we enrolled in a TIL trial at Moffitt Cancer Center in Tampa, Florida. Real quickly, for anybody who doesn't know what TIL is, which I'm assuming is the majority of the audience, it's tumor-infiltrating lymphocytes. It's a form of adoptive cell transfer where cells are taken out of you, modified or duplicated in some form, and then reinserted to fight a disease such as cancer. It's really pioneered, not by myself, but by Dr. Steven Rosenberg at the NIH. And only a handful of facilities in the world perform adoptive cell transfer, and even less, I believe 6 or 7, do this particular type of therapy called TIL. So we found what we thought was the best option. As we were looking over the consent form, began speaking with the doctors, saying, okay, well, how has everybody else, you know, how have other patients fared on this? And the oncologists both looked at each other, looked at us, and said, as far as we know, you'll be the first patient to try Yervoy and TIL combined together. And I looked at them and said, okay, that's great. That means no one's ever failed this before. So we signed on after a few hurdles, which you'll hear about as well, and we began the TIL trial. So what happened? There was a few kind of false starts in the way, but we were able to start TIL in January of 2013. You've never seen 65 billion T cells before. Look in that little bag right there, and you will see the best T cells I had that would fight cancer, at least my version of melanoma. And if you'll excuse us just one second, we are actually verifying that we have the right immunotherapy treatment, so we are hooking up my IV right now, and we'll be starting this momentarily.
No, okay.
What's your birthday?
5275.
All right. 222389.
Not everybody in the world knows my birthday.
No, well.
So, excuse us there for the delay, but we are about to hook me up, and you won't really notice anything. I shouldn't. It's a very simple 30-minute infusion that you kind of saw in the video, reconstituted through an IV. My wonderful nurse / guardian angel, big sister Kathy over here, has been doing all of my infusions, and we've been doing this so long, she's even got a promotion now, so she came back to do the infusion one last time. So, like I was saying, sorry for the interruption there. What happened was we put these T cells in, went through 8 rounds of high-dose interleukin-2 to support them. Really went through a lot. Was in the hospital for, I believe it was 10 days or so. And guess what? Not only was I the first person to ever try this combination of Yervoy and TIL, I became the first person to ever fail this combination of Yervoy and TIL. So here I am in March of 2013, 50 pounds lighter than I was 7 months before when I checked into the hospital, having already undergone this right here would have been my 4th surgery, and with tumors growing pretty rapidly and pretty expansively in quite a few areas. So we decided it was time for Plan B, and luckily we had already done some research. There we go. And the drug is going in. Again, sorry for the you're not able to experience this on video, but we are connected, and PD-1. Speaking of, we are connected to our PD-1 right now, and this was a trial that we felt was going to give me the best chance of that durable long-term response. The problem was is that we couldn't get it at Moffitt Cancer Center. There was a delay in getting it there, and you'll hear in a moment why we were a little apprehensive, and we were able to find it at a smaller but still very good cancer center here, local in Fort Lauderdale, just about 5 miles from our house. So we went home. We had been in the Moffitt, Tampa, St. Pete area for almost 4 months. We were able to come home and start the pembrolizumab trial in April of 2013. Good thing is that we started the drug, and I got randomized onto the trial drug. There's a third of an arm that is chemotherapy, and we were significantly and extremely happy that I was able to start one of the 2 doses, either the high or low dose of the pembrolizumab. We still don't know which one it is. And there was a lot of anxiety the first few doses. We didn't know what to expect. We didn't know how I would react to it, to the drug. And it was so new that we really didn't have a lot of feedback from other patients. Just had some of what Merck had provided us. So imagine our surprise when we saw almost an immediate tumor reduction. We had 2 tumors, or I had 2 tumors in my neck glands that you could see, and within weeks, 4 or 5 weeks of starting the treatment, the tumors shrank noticeably. And it took us 12 weeks, on the study protocol to go through and understand, be able to actually get a CT scan. But when we did, we found that there was a 46% drop in the first 12 weeks. And we continued to drop and drop and drop until we hit the level we're at about a year and a half ago, which is the 4 centimeters or so that's left in 2 spots. We did have a little bit of a hiccup in the road. Last summer, an adrenal gland popped up, and I was fortunate enough to understand, but also fortunate enough to have good guidance from the oncology team here to say, we don't know what this really is. You should really go back to Moffitt and talk to them and get an opinion from Moffitt. And Moffitt was even, keeping with the same mantra. They said, well, the best care you can get for something like this would be at MD Anderson in Houston. They can actually remove this tumor and bank it for a potential Plan C down the road for potentially a TIL, another TIL therapy that could work or could give us a response if for some reason the PD-1 stopped working. So the fifth of my 6 surgeries was an adrenal gland removal last summer, and it allowed us to have, sort of in the bank that there is an option if something stops working. So part of what you've heard so far in this is finding your ninja, and a friend of mine recommended that, and that's my friend Ninja right there. Well, that's not really him, but I do have a friend whose nickname is Ninja Don, and he has been about as amazing as a friend could be, or someone could be, to help facilitate my care. When I was first hospitalized, he organized communications both with doctors, with family members and other friends. He's continued to help ask questions to the point where he's become one of the vital cogs of the support system. So we entitled this part of it, Finding Your Ninja, because of the cute little name. But really what that means is that every patient that is going to go through a diagnosis and treatment, be it melanoma or some other type of cancer, does need to find that person or that team of people that will function, as he did and as quite a few others of my family and friends did. I was lucky on many levels that I had such a good support network that we didn't have to worry about the newborn in the house, that people were willing to watch. We were able to go to a place like Moffitt and stay there, and we're supported by family and friends along the way. We had people who were able to call doctors and do research for us when either I wasn't up to it or we just needed a break. As for the doctors and medical professionals out there listening, that's one of the essential things to my recovery, and it's certainly something I've heard from other patients that has been a key in theirs. So I would encourage you to proactively push your patients to identify those family members that can offer the right kind of support, not the kind that drags you down, but the one that does the work in the background so that that the patient can focus on becoming healthy. I was lucky in a way that I worked in the pharmaceutical field when I was, when I was young, and I knew what a clinical trial meant. I knew that it wasn't just being a guinea pig, and that most of the breakthroughs were happening in the clinical trial world. I was very fortunate that when the first trial started, we had people that knew friends at Bristol Myers, because the first trial was waiting on a final stamp of approval from their legal department, and they, rightfully so, wanted to ensure that all the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted. But in that time, my cancer was getting worse, and it finally took me picking up the phone and calling Bristol Myers and saying, this might be your job, but this is my life. And went to LinkedIn and found a few friends who worked with someone at Bristol Myers or knew someone there, and had them actually, call their friends and say, is there anything you can do to speed this up? 2 days after that, we got a call from the oncologist at Moffitt saying, we don't know what you did, but you found a way to make this work. They called today and they said your trial's approved. So I was fortunate that I was able to do that, and I had enough friends and family that could help speed along the process. Doctors and lots of the medical profession are very overburdened, and you want to be the only patient. And it's great when you find a facility or an office or a practice that can treat you that way. But as a patient, you also need to realize that you are just one of dozens or sometimes hundreds of other patients, and owning your health care is something that I've certainly pushed on others, and I think that patients would be wise to understand that right away, that they have a responsibility to push their doctors and their team to get the answers that they need. Finally, the last thing about having a great team is that that there are people that will push the stuff for you. There are advocacy organizations out there. You've heard from a couple of them today, the Melanoma Research Alliance, the Melanoma Research Foundation have both presented earlier today, and both, along with a few others, are great organizations. I was lucky enough that someone found one of them for me early on, and unfortunately just did not connect with them, but was fortunate again that they did find me and actually connected me to Holy Cross and this trial so early, in fact, that the first person we talked to here didn't realize that the trial had even started. They were still waiting on the papers. So we seem to be at the forefront of getting trials started. When I did start my PD-1 trial here, Luke, who you saw in the video, is the pharmacist in charge of mixing the drugs, and he and I talked for a little bit about the side effects, about how I would end up feeling, and what the drug would do to me. You know, I was at the time, if you remember that picture, 180 pounds, and certainly had been through 7 months of different therapies and surgeries, and was not in a very strong state, mentally or physically. And he told us one thing, and the context was, you should be fly during treatment, but he told us one thing that has sort of echoed with us for the last few years, and that is that you are using your immune system to fight cancer. Do whatever you can to keep that functioning at its optimal level. And that sunk in. That really became, it's easy to see the headlines about immunotherapies, but until you really become a patient and understand what immunotherapy is doing, which you saw in the video, you don't realize that all it is unlocking brakes. And to sum it up, if you don't take anything else away from today, take this away if you are a patient, or if you are a doctor, give this to your patients, that immunotherapies don't beat cancer directly. The immune system does. Immunotherapies simply provide the opportunity for your immune system to do the battle it was, or to do the job it was supposed to, or designed to do, and that is remove cancer cells from your body. In that regard, my family and I changed the way that we lived. We sort of adopted a much better diet. This is nothing new that you've probably heard about eating more vegetables, eating less red meat for years and years. But we took that to heart, and we focused not on just getting healthy, but being healthy. And there's a difference there, much like if you change your diet versus just going on a diet. Our focus became being healthy. We changed the way that we lived. We focused on nutrition that we put into my body, into our bodies, and became much more aware of some of the stuff that wasn't as good that we tried to reduce or eliminate. We reduced stress. We gave me especially time to rest, which was something that I think became very evident after the first infusion or two, that this medicine works, but it also does take a toll, and fatigue is the biggest side effect. So we changed the way that we lived and eliminated not just some obvious barriers to being healthy, but ones that weren't as plain to see. We planned downtime, started planning relationship time, even date nights, just for my wife and I, to give us a little bit of a break from our two wonderful, energetic children. We focused on people instead of things or events. Relationships became a little more important, and the time that we had with other people became more of a priority. And those things, I believe, really, they're not going to beat cancer, but they enable your body to focus on what it's supposed to be doing, and that's healing. So we also did a little bit in the way of alternative and complementary treatments. This is certainly a much debated topic. We were given very good guidance by the ER doctor that admitted me for the first time about changing our diet, about incorporating things like medicinal mushrooms that were, just supplements you can buy that boosted your immune system. And once we understood the connection between what I was doing medically and what I was doing with my body. We steered towards the things that we knew that were proven scientifically to offer better health benefits, to be immune system boosters, that cancer patients would, that benefited cancer patients, vitamin C, curcumin, eating cruciferous vegetables, garlic and onions for omelets in the morning, which doesn't always make you smell great, but it certainly helps fight cancer. Honey and ginger tea with some lemon. Like, those things became a way of life. Like I said earlier, it wasn't just getting healthy, but being healthy. And we really adopted that as a way to live. And you know, we certainly don't live like that 100% of the time. There's birthday cake, there's treats. But if we can be healthy most of the time, then that will allow my body to fight with this drug, and it certainly will allow those times that we do give ourselves a little bit of a break to be enjoyed that much better. So to live with immunotherapy, there are a few different things that are important to note. I'll quickly go through this slide because there's a list on the next one, but it's not just physical. There are mental and emotional hurdles to clear. I hear quite a bit that you look great, and I've heard that all along, but I think people actually mean it this time. But there are still, I am still, fighting cancer, and we still go for scans every 12 weeks. I still come here and get an infusion every 3 weeks. So this is certainly not a done deal or a victory at this point. So that does take a mental and an emotional toll, and it's not just on the patient. It's on the caregivers, the family. We talked about earlier that cancer doesn't affect the person; it affects the family. There's no one it affects more than a spouse or a parent or a child who is taking care of a cancer patient, and it becomes a difficult battle for everyone. So living with immunotherapy doesn't just mean that, hey, you look good, it's a pretty easy infusion. It means you still face those doubts and nagging worries that this might only last for months, it might only last for a few years, that am I going to have something show up on a scan, and you don't know, and that process of dealing with the unknown and the apprehension that comes along with it isn't easy to do. And luckily there's a lot of organizations out there that will help, advocacy organizations for any type of cancer, along with very generic cancer organizations like the ACS or a Gilda's Club or any other organization that's focus and mission is to support patients and their families. So if you are a patient, don't feel that you cannot ask for help or it's not available. There are people out there that will give you everything that you need. For doctors and other medical professionals, it's hard to find these things. It's hard to know what's what, especially in the early stages of a diagnosis. If you are able to steer a patient towards a few trusted websites or a local group or a national group that provides very solid and continued support, that is a very good thing for a person on immunotherapy who's on this sort of leading edge of cancer treatments and doesn't know, because there's just not enough information out there, what to expect. It affects our daily lives too. It's certainly not always easy being the 40-year-old dad in the room with cancer, and we try as much to make it as normal for our family, our children as possible. I participate in as much as I can, and that I think has helped us, mentally and emotionally deal with this. But there are just little things like, going to the food store. It's a different way of shopping. Going on trips, are planned around the infusions that I have here or the doctor's visits. Anything that comes up medically, You get a headache or a fever, and if you're anybody out there, you might just go and run to the drugstore and grab something. You know, as a cancer patient, as a clinical trial participant, you know, it's my responsibility to let my doctors know what is affecting me, because not only is this new ground, but this is going to be used to help others down the road deal with their side effects. And we learn about these, you know, every few months. A few new ones come out. So that leads me to what can I do or what can't I do? And part of the reason I described this, when we first started my cancer battle, a very well-meaning friend gave us a list of foods that I should and shouldn't eat. And the list of things I could eat was not very long, probably post-it size. And the things I couldn't eat were significantly longer. And I didn't deal well with, I can't eat this, I can't eat that. I finally said, tell me what I can eat, so let me focus on getting better. And in that spirit, here are a few things that, more generally, that a immunotherapy patient can and can't do. They can live healthy. We talked about that in the last couple of slides. And they cannot expect the medicine to do all the work. As a patient, you need to be proactive with your diagnosis, proactive in your treatment, and proactive in your lifestyle. So all the healthy stuff I talked about before encompasses both the good things to do and eat and the reduction or elimination of some of those things that maybe won't be treating your immune system as kindly. And that's part of the thing that, as a patient, if you want to survive and thrive, you focus on both the good and the bad. You can be a well-informed patient, but you cannot expect your doctors to know everything. They are very well-trained, very well-educated, and very smart people. But like I mentioned before, they all have practices and businesses and hospitals or research facilities to run. They don't know it all, so there's a responsibility for you to proactively understand treatments and their side effects and not believe everything you read on the internet. We've talked about research, and it's difficult to say believe this and believe that, especially since this is actually on the internet right now. So you can believe us, but there are a lot of things out there, and if you start relying on Dr. Google, it's going to drive you crazy and certainly make you a confused patient. So being proactive in understanding the treatment and communicating with your medical team is vitally important. You can rest and heal. We just touched on that. You can't let inertia set in. Stay active. When I started my second treatment, my wife asked one of our friends if hot yoga was okay. And since then, she and I have never really looked back, and I've made that part of something that I do. Try to do religiously a couple times a week. And many thanks to the yoga joint for supporting me in getting my mind and my body healthy outside of the doctor's office, and not sitting on the sofa or not sitting in front of the computer and just worrying about why I was the one stuck with cancer or reading up on different treatment things. Be active. Don't let yourself just get bogged down by a treatment or a diagnosis. You can focus on getting better. We talked a lot about what that is, and you cannot continually worry about getting sicker. The reality is that many cancer patients will struggle with their diagnosis and certainly will struggle with getting to the holy grail of no evidence of disease. And more people than not right now that were in my shoes still will not make it as far as I've made it, and that's something that researchers are really trying to change. It's going to take time, but you can't worry about that. You can't sit there and dwell on that, because if you continue to do that, your chances of being one of those statistics are going to increase. Focus yourself on getting better and enjoying the happiness around you. Related, you can have down days. It's certainly okay. I had one of my worst days for my daughter's 3rd birthday party where I couldn't make it through her birthday party, and I threw up and I passed out. And I remember thinking, is this it? And you know, that day I kind of said, okay, cancer, you have this day. but you're not going to get me tomorrow. You know, I'm going to come back tomorrow, and that's going to be a different day. So you cannot expect to just be normal. You know, this isn't a normal thing. This is difficult. This is hard. This doesn't allow you to just do what you want when you want. But it's something that can be overcome as long as you recognize it, that it is a challenge, and it is a what's the best way of saying this? It is something that, if met head on, can be beaten. The last thing you can do is stay strong. I've always signed off my emails to other patients with this phrase, and it's not easy to stay strong. What cancer patients go through, what they do, it's not easy, but it's very simple. Get healthy, stay strong, be there for the ones you love. You absolutely cannot give up hope. We'll wrap this up pretty quickly. In the last year and a half, what I've been able to do, I took my kids on a 5-mile timed race. It was in the video too, and I finished that one. I fulfilled a promise to my college roommate and another friend and my brother-in-law to do a tough mudder, 10.5 miles and a bunch of obstacles. Those are the things that I set out to do. And someone asked, you know, why do you do this? And my answer to them was because I needed to know that I still could, and I can. And that's one of the biggest things I think that has led me is my attitude towards this. So, you know, 3 years later, the doctor that said, I'll be surprised if you're here in 2 years, that has now turned into this. My little man isn't so little anymore, and my 2-year-old is now a 5-year-old kindergarten girl. And we're still together as a family, and there's not one person missing out of that. So when the doctor said I'd be surprised if he's here in 2 years, I was glad he gave me the honest statistics, because when you deal with this, you learn 3 lessons. You learn that you don't just take the first option given. Do your homework and find the best right treatment. I set a goal that day. I was going to be there for 2 years and many more. And the last thing I learned was statistics are not sentences. And even if he was technically correct that he'd be surprised if I was here in 2 years, I wasn't going to let that dictate what the outcome of this is going to be. So I'm going to close with 2 things that I've seen. You'll know Stuart Scott recently passed from cancer. Said, you beat cancer by how you live, why you live, and in the manner in which you live. And the other quote from the late Jim Valvano that I've had above my bed or next to my office since my first diagnosis when I was 25 is, cancer can take away all of my physical abilities, but it cannot touch my heart, it cannot touch my mind, it cannot touch my heart, and it cannot touch my soul. And seeing those examples of people thriving, even though they lost their battle, that those are what I like to live my cancer battle by, and hopefully I've done Stuart and Jim proud. So with that, I thank you for participating. I'll take any questions and answers in the short time we have left, and hope you gain something out of this. Thank you.
Thank you, TJ, for that informative presentation. It is time for Q&A. If you have a question you'd like to ask TJ, please do so now. Just click on the green Q&A button at the lower left of the presentation window. Type your question into the box that appears on your screen and click on the send button. And we'll try to get to as many as we can and follow up if we don't have time today. And we'll give people a few moments to formulate questions. Okay, if there are no questions, I would like to once again thank TJ for his presentation. TJ, do you have any final comments you'd like to share with us today?
I think I ended with what I wanted to talk about with the Stuart Scott and Jim Valvano comments. I do appreciate LabRoots having the patient perspective, as it sometimes isn't as noteworthy or as newsworthy. So I think hearing that certainly from one patient, for all the patients out there, is appreciated for you guys including this in the presentations today.
Well, stay where you are because I have a question for you here. When did you have your first PET scan, and was that clear even though you may have had other manifestations?
We had a PET scan when I was first diagnosed in August of 2012. For the next one it was almost 2 years to the day later before the adrenal gland removal. CT scans were the norm for both clinical trials. So, with the CTs measuring size, we continue to see stuff, but they did do a PET scan to see how far the adrenal gland tumor had spread, and we got very, very surprising news. So I think that, going forward, a mixture of the two is certainly an appropriate way to measure how I'm doing and how other patients do.
Well, thank you for sharing that and all that you shared today. I would also like to thank our sponsor, Roche Diagnostics, for making today's educational webcast possible. Before we go, I want to let everyone know that today's webcast will be available for on-demand viewing through March 2016. You will receive an email from LabRoots letting you know when this webcast will be available for replay. Please share that announcement with your colleagues who may have missed today's live event. That's all for now. Thank you for joining us. We hope to see you again soon. Bye.